I saw that when I was 13 years old, and the reason why it became my favorite film over the years, because whenever I saw the film again, we sought it out. We went to different theaters to see it.
They call him the keeper of cinema's soul, but Martin Scorsese has always been its most restless student.
How many films have you seen, Marty?
Oh, I don't know. It's terrible. It's just too many. Seen too many films.
The man who gave us blood-soaked epics and spiritual odysseys, who turned violence into poetry and guilt into art. But when he talks about the films that shaped him, Scorsese doesn't sound like a master. He sounds like a pilgrim.
So, well, in the subject matter that would enable me to have actors that are in that tradition.
I saw it and I knew I had to make movies. Not wanted to, had to. For Scorsese, cinema isn't entertainment, it's communion. And like all great believers, his faith was forged by others.
He's got such range, you see, and I've been lucky enough to meet him years ago when we worked on Gangs in New York, and he happened to like my films a lot.
The frames that haunted him, the directors who became his saints, the movies that didn't just influence his work, but rewrote his DNA. From Italian neorealism to American westerns, from silent contemplation to operatic fury, Scorsese's 7 favorite films reveal more than technique. They reveal obsession, because you can study filmmaking, but you can't study devotion.
Thing that, for some reason, stays with you, so that a few years later you could watch it again, or 10 years later you watch it again and it's different.
Here comes Martin Scorsese naming his 7 favorite movies. 7. Vertigo, 1958. Hitchcock called it a story about obsession. Scorsese called it a documentary about his own soul.
We responded to the film very strongly, didn't know why. Couldn't really tell why, couldn't tell what was happening, but we really went with the picture.
Vertigo wasn't just a thriller. It was a fever dream about the madness of trying to reshape reality into your perfect vision. And for a filmmaker who would spend his career exploring the thin line between love and control, it was scripture written in shadow and light. I made you over, didn't I, Scotty? I made you over just like you made me over. The story seems simple. A detective falls for a woman who may not exist, but Hitchcock's genius was in the spiral. The way obsession becomes creation, becomes destruction. Jimmy Stewart's Scotty Ferguson doesn't just love Kim Novak's Madeline, he rebuilds her, sculpts her, demands she become his fantasy, even if it kills her.
Madeline Astor.
My name's John Ferguson.
Good, strong name.
Acquaintances call me Scotty.
I shall call you Mr. Ferguson.
Oh, gee.
Scorsese first saw it as a teenager and couldn't sleep for weeks. The Vertigo wasn't just Stewart's fear of heights, it was the dizzying realization that love could be a form of violence, that the camera itself could become complicit in voyeurism. You see Vertigo in every Scorsese film about men who mistake possession for passion. Travis Bickle's obsession with Betsy, Jake LaMotta's jealous rage, Jordan Belfort's need to control everything he touches. The famous dolly zoom that Hitchcock invented, that sickening pull focus that makes the world seem to collapse, became Scorsese's signature move. Vertigo taught me that cinema could be about the act of looking at itself, that the camera could make us complicit in the character's madness. Because sometimes the most beautiful films are the most disturbing ones, and sometimes the greatest love stories are actually horror movies in disguise. 6. The Red Shoes, 1948.
I wanted to give you some idea of how the Red Shoes restoration was done. Now, it was complicated because the film was made using the 3-script Technicolor process.
Powell and Pressburger didn't just make a movie about ballet, they made ballet out of movies. And for young Scorsese, watching Moira Shearer dance herself to death, it was the first time he understood that cinema could move like music, think like painting, and hurt like religion. The Red Shoes want to dance, and dance they must. The story haunted him. A dancer torn between love and art, between life and the thing that makes life worth living. But it wasn't the story that rewrote Scorsese's brain, it was the way they told it. The camera didn't just watch the dance, it became the dance. Colors that seemed to bleed off the screen. Movement that defied gravity. Scorsese called it his first masterclass in visual storytelling. Every tracking shot in Goodfellas carries DNA from the Red Shoes. The way the camera glides through the Copacabana, the way it follows Henry through his cocaine paranoia, that's Powell and Pressburger by way of Little Italy. The Red Shoes taught me that movies could be paintings in motion, that they could make you feel things you didn't have words for. Because some films don't just entertain you, they possess you. The film's central tragedy, the artist who destroys herself for her art, became a recurring theme in Scorsese's work. From Jake LaMotta's self-destructive perfectionism to Jordan Belfort's compulsive excess, Scorsese learned that the most compelling characters are those who choose their obsessions over their happiness. The Red Shoes didn't just influence his camera movements, it taught him that cinema's greatest power lies in its ability to make destruction beautiful. 5. The Leopard, 1963. Visconti understood something most directors never learn, that the most devastating violence isn't a gunshot, it's time itself. The Leopard wasn't just about the end of aristocracy in 19th century Sicily. It was about watching worlds die with dignity. We were the leopards, the lions. Those who will take our place will be little jackals, hyenas. For Scorsese, raised in the dying world of Little Italy, the leopard felt like prophecy. Burt Lancaster's Prince Selina, watching his Sicily transform, knowing his kind would vanish but refusing to rage against it. The film moved like a funeral march, beautiful and inevitable. Visconti taught Scorsese that cinema could be literature, that a single shot could contain centuries of history. The ballroom sequence alone, 45 minutes of waltz and decay, influenced every party scene Scorsese would ever film. You see it in The Wedding in Goodfellas, the opera in The Age of Innocence, the casino floors in Casino. The Leopard showed me that movies could be about time, about how we carry the past even as it kills us. It was operatic without being loud, tragic without being sentimental. And for a filmmaker obsessed with the weight of tradition, it was scripture. The film's meditation on change and continuity would echo through every Scorsese film about dying neighborhoods and vanishing ways of life. 4. Citizen Kane, 1941. Every film student knows Citizen Kane is important, but for Scorsese, it wasn't about film school, it was about revelation. At 24, watching Orson Welles tear apart the American dream frame by frame, Scorsese realized cinema could be both entertainment and autopsy. I always gagged on that silver spoon. Welles didn't just tell Kane's story, he X-rayed it. The deep, focused photography that kept background and foreground equally sharp, equally important. The narrative that jumped through time like memory itself. The way power corrupted not just morally, but visually, each shot getting darker as Kane's soul shrank. Scorsese called it his graduate degree in filmmaking. The tracking shots in Goodfellas, the way the camera moves through the Copacabana like it owns the place, that's Welles. The fractured timeline of The Irishman, jumping decades with a single cut, that's Kane. Citizen Kane taught me that every shot is a choice, that the camera doesn't just record the truth, it creates it. But more than technique, Kane gave Scorsese permission to be ruthless with his characters, to love them and destroy them in the same breath. Because sometimes the greatest tragedy isn't what happens to us, but what we become. The film's exploration of ambition as both salvation and damnation became Scorsese's obsession. 3. Tokyo Story, 1953. Ozu didn't direct movies, he meditated with a camera. And for Scorsese, a filmmaker who made his name with kinetic energy and volcanic outbursts, Tokyo Story was a masterclass in the power of stillness. Life is disappointing, isn't it? The story was deceptively simple. Elderly parents visit their grown children in Tokyo, only to discover they've become strangers. No violence, no shouting, just the quiet devastation of time pulling families apart. Ozu shot it all from tatami mat level, his camera patient as a monk, watching life unfold with the inevitability of seasons changing. Scorsese called it the most profound film ever made about the passage of time. In a career built on movement, Ozu taught him that sometimes the camera's greatest power is knowing when to stop. You see Tokyo Story in the quieter moments of Scorsese's later work. The contemplative silences in silence, the way The Irishman lingers on faces weathered by decades of choices. Even in his most violent films, there are these pockets of stillness, moments where the camera just breathes. Ozu showed me that silence could be louder than screaming, that the spaces between words could say more than dialogue ever could. Because sometimes the most devastating truth is the one nobody speaks. 2. The Searchers, 1956 John Ford, didn't just make Westerns. He made American mythology. And The Searchers was his darkest prayer, a film that worshipped the frontier while exposing its rotten heart. For Scorsese, watching John Wayne's Ethan Edwards hunt his kidnapped niece across Monument Valley, it was the first time he saw America's shadow made flesh. That'll be the day. The story seems simple. A Civil War veteran searches for his niece, taken by Comanche raiders. But Ford's genius was in the spaces between heroism and hatred. Wayne's Ethan wasn't a hero. He was a racist consumed by obsession, his quest becoming more about vengeance than rescue. The film asked the question America didn't want to answer. What if our heroes are monsters? Scorsese called it the most influential film ever made, and you can see why. Travis Bickle's isolation in Taxi Driver, his warped sense of mission, that's Ethan Edwards stalking through New York instead of the desert. The twisted patriotism of The Departed, the way violence becomes ritual, that's Ford's DNA. The Searchers taught me that cinema could examine the darkness in American dreams, that the most dangerous stories are the ones we tell ourselves about who we are. Ford shot it in Monument Valley, that cathedral of Western mythology, but he filled it with doubt. The landscape was beautiful. The story was poisonous. And for a filmmaker who would spend his career examining American violence, it was the perfect contradiction. Because sometimes the most beautiful lies are the most dangerous truths. 1. The Bicycle Thief. 1948, De Sica didn't have a studio. He had the streets of Rome. He didn't have movie stars. He had real people carrying real pain. And for young Scorsese, watching a father and son search desperately for a stolen bicycle, it was the moment cinema stopped being entertainment and became sacrament. This is the film that made me pick up a camera. The story was heartbreakingly simple. Antonio needs his bicycle to work. It gets stolen. He and his son Bruno spend the day searching, their dignity crumbling with each dead end. No Hollywood ending, no triumphant music, just the weight of ordinary desperation in a world that doesn't care. De Sica shot it with non-professional actors on actual Roman streets, still scarred from the war. The neorealist approach wasn't a style choice. It was survival. He couldn't afford artifice, so he found the truth. For Scorsese, raised on the streets of Little Italy, watching his own father struggle to provide, The Bicycle Thief felt like looking in a mirror. The Catholic guilt, the father-son dynamics, the way poverty makes heroes of ordinary men, it was all there. You see it in Mean Streets, in Charlie's desperate attempts to save Johnny Boy. You feel it in Raging Bull, in Jake's relationship with his brother, even in The Irishman, in Frank's quiet loyalty to his family. The Bicycle Thief taught me that cinema could find the sacred in the ordinary, that the smallest human moments could contain the entire universe, because sometimes the most profound stories are the simplest ones. And there it is. 7 films that didn't just teach Scorsese how to make movies, they taught him why movies matter. Not the obvious choices, but the necessary ones. The films that whispered secrets about time, obsession, and the weight of being human. Now you know what shaped the master. The question remains, what shapes you?